Well, my dog died. Yeah, he was a 17-year-old Shih Tzu mix, the doggy love of my life. He was a bit of a dictator, an absolute menace to society, and I loved him with every piece of my soul.
Mm.
And yeah, he passed away in February. He was blind and deaf and had doggy dementia, and it was 17. And yeah, it was the hardest decision I have ever had to make to put him down, but it was the right one. And
What was his name?
Wilson.
Did you Wilson from like birth? Birth? Is that what you could say? But or did you rescue him or
So yeah, I did. I rescued him when he was 1. He had been in the pound twice before he was a year
Wow.
old. And he got rescued by a special needs adoption agency the second time because his eyes had glazed over. They thought he was blind. And this rescue locally in Salt Lake picked him up and they took him to the vet, and the vet was like, no, he's just really stressed out. Like, he's
Wow.
fine. Smartest thing that dog ever did was that. Was
kind of pretend he was blind?
pretending to be blind. Yeah. Yeah. The next smartest thing he did, because this dog, I mean, for most of his life, he was essentially a potato. But when I was looking for a dog, my dog my childhood dog, Sugar, she was an American Eskimo. She lived to be 21.
Wow.
And,
Holy smokes.
Yeah. Yeah. And when she passed away, yeah, that was hard, but I realized pretty immediately, like, I need another dog in my life. I need a dog that's, like all mine. I need my dog. And so I started looking online for dogs near me, and I was on Pet Finder, and I saw this fat, ugly Chihuahua, and his name was Brownie. And what got me was in his description, they said that he was on the Doggy Weight Watchers program. And I thought that was the coolest thing. I mean, little 22-year-old Kristina was like, yes, that is my dog. I'm a baker. Its name is Brownie.
Oh, I love it.
Perfect. Yeah. So I go to this adoption event. It was at like a Petco or PetSmart or something. And I show up and I'm not seeing Brownie. I'm seeing all these other dogs and not seeing Brownie. And I'm like, okay, maybe got adopted already. So my mother calls me over to this crate. And as I'm walking over, I see this like sad mop of a dog in the back of his crate. He's gray and tan and like you can't see his face. And I kind of look at him. I crouch down to get on his level. And he kind of perks up a little bit. And the adoption lady says, he's a really sweet dog. Do you want to meet him? And I'm like, okay. So we take him over to this play area that they had set up. And I sit down and this dog immediately jumps in my lap and I start crying. And then my mother starts crying. And then the adoption lady started crying. And she said, if you cry on it, you have to adopt it. And I was like, okay, that's perfectly reasonable. So that was how I got Wilson. Yeah. And I took him through the store to pick out some toys. And he picked out, this is probably not appropriate to say, but I'm going to do it anyway. He picked out the most phallic toy he could find. And I should have taken that as a hint for what kind of dog this would be. It didn't. So we got home and he did zoomies, which I had never seen before. So I'm like, okay, this dog is running rapidly around my house, making all sorts of crazy noises. What did I get myself into? And then, as Wilson started to relax, he was a legit menace to society. Like he's the kind of dog where you're really glad that they're not like a human child because they would make Netflix documentaries, like true crime documentaries of this dog. The things he would do to his toys, he would rip out their eyes, rip out their squeakers,
God.
do inappropriate things to them, and then just murder them.
Oh my God.
Like we had a graveyard of these dog toys.
He was working out some kind of aggression.
Like, this is what being in the pound twice
Right.
before
Yeah.
you're one does to a dog. Like, you think about nature over nurture. Like, this dog was.
That's wild.
But then, as he started to grow up, though, he just turned out to be the sweetest dog. You know, he loved to snuggle. That was the thing that, like, he was a champion snuggler. No one snuggled like Wilson snuggled. And he's the reason that when I started working from home, it was, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. So it was pre-COVID. And this dog, whenever I'd sit like at a proper desk, he would bark at me incessantly until I went and sat in bed. And then he would snuggle up right next to me and he would be perfectly calm.
No way.
So yeah, so as a professional working from home, I have pretty much always worked from bed so that he would be comfortable. But yeah, this dog was with me I adopted him when I was 22. He lived to be 17. Yeah, so he was, everything for me. He was there through breakups. He was there through job changes. He was there through health issues and buying a house and, deaths in the family. Like, he was there for everything.
Yeah. That is something we hear a lot of. Our animals become the constant like force in our life through so much.
Companion.
And they are, constant companion. That unconditional, like, they're there and they don't want anything. They don't need anything else from us other than snuggles in bed. But like that unconditional love through the hardest moments of our life is something that's very, very common that keeps coming up. And I think it's something that gets overlooked, like we take it for granted, I think. So you worked from home in bed for this dog. And I want to kind of touch a little bit on as his health started to diminish and then going through that process. But before I forget, what was the shift after he passed, after you had to let him go, between how you worked for 7 years versus how you work now? Have you kept that same routine because of it? I mean, it's only been since February, you said?
Yeah, it was February. I am currently sitting in my bed.
Okay.
This is where I work from every day. People ask me about my background all the time because I look like I'm in a cave, like a cave with good natural light, but still a cave. And then I'm like, well, people like, this is my headboard. I'm sitting in bed. It's cozy here, and yeah, like it feels like home because I spent so much time here with him. Like, I have a big house with couches and like other comfy areas. I have a desk with a nice chair that, if I sit in it, my back won't be so fucked up. But I sit here because this is where Wilson was.
Yeah. Now, let's go back just a little bit to when you start to have this moment of, okay, something's going on here. Something's starting to happen. Life is going to come to a turning point at some point, or a fork in the road, rather, of like having to make a decision or figure out what to do with Wilson. What was that, and what did that look like?
Oh yeah. He, because of how old he was, like he had been on a slow decline for a few years, but he was still happy and comfortable. And I had told myself, when he gets to the point where he's no longer happy and comfortable, I have to let him go, because I don't want, like, he is the creature that kept me happy and comfortable and whole. So I couldn't let him suffer. I couldn't do that. It wasn't until honestly, this past Thanksgiving, when my parents hadn't seen him in, more than 6 months. And I saw how they were reacting to how he had changed. Like he had to be carried up and down steps. And I live alone. It was just me, Wilson, and my cat Calvin. And I didn't really realize like how much accommodation I was putting into Wilson. And I mean, I was doing doggy hospice care. Like he was incontinent. He couldn't get up and down steps. He couldn't see. So I had to guide him. He could barely eat some days. He wasn't drinking water as much as he should have been. So I had to like guide him to the water bowl and, picking him up to put him on the bed and helping him go to the bathroom sometimes when he was outside. And it wasn't until I saw them witnessing all of this that it was like, oh wow, he's like, this is not good. This is not fair to him. And I told myself, because he still seemed pretty happy and reasonably comfortable. So I told myself, like, let's get past Christmas and New Year's and see how he's doing. And I did. And he was not himself, but he was okay. But then at the beginning of this year, he started rapidly declining. And there was one day where I was working from bed, as I always do. It was a Monday. And he seemed a level of off that I had not ever witnessed before. And the last time I had witnessed it in another dog, it was right before Sugar, my dog that lived to be 21, passed away. And I don't know if he had a stroke or a seizure or what, but something happened and it was very clear he was no longer comfortable or happy. And so I worked a full day, and I work at a tech startup. So I work long hours, and having a potato for a dog worked pretty well with that. Like we didn't have to go for walks. He was a dog. He was the kind of dog that like was in a stroller when he went on walks, which in suburban Utah is just like the funniest thing, because you're walking your dog in a stroller down the street in the suburban neighborhood, and your neighbors will come out and be like, oh, what a cute baby. And then they actually look in this stroller and they see this like old, ugly dog that looks like that, that Gary Busey infamous mugshot where like his hair is all over the place and one eye is going like off that way. That was my dog. That's who my dog looked like. So yeah, that was Wilson. But that night I was like, you know what? I'm shutting off at 6:00 and I'm going to be with Wilson. So I shut down my laptop and I got him dinner, and I made my dinner while he was hanging out on the floor eating scrambled eggs. And we were just snuggling, and he gave me this look like I can't really explain it other than to just say that like, he was saying help. And so, I started looking up at-home euthanasia services, and I immediately started crying and having a panic attack, because this dog had been with me through my formative adult years. Like for as long as I had been an adult, I had had this dog, and it broke me. And I remember this was like 10:00 at night. I'm calling my mom over and over again. Like, I can't do this on my own. I need my mommy, because Wilson needs his mommy, and I can't function in this. That night, after I calmed down a little bit, after talking to my mom, I found this site called Laps of Love.
Oh, yeah.
Their website was like, it was comfort in a website. which is a weird thing to say, but it was comfort in a website. And they show you like the local vets in your area that could come to your house to do the services. And yeah, I felt like, okay, this is the hardest decision, but it's the one that I have to make for Wilson. And this is the right avenue because my vet can't come to the house. They're not going to. And the vet is going to just like, that's not how he wants to go. He doesn't want to go to the vet to, be scared in his final moments. So I filled out the form and I called my mom back. Tears, just like I had eyeliner and mascara all over my face. I looked like I was, like that girl from The Ring when she crawls out of the well.
Yeah.
That's what I looked like. And I'm, in the cave. So like it was, I don't think she got a picture of me, but she should have taken one. She's talking to me, trying to calm me down, saying, you're making the right decision. And then all of a sudden I get a call from them. And this is almost 11 o'clock at night at this point. And I hang up with my mom and I talk to them, and it was the sweetest woman on the other end of the line. And she talked about, how the whole process works. And, she had read through everything that I had typed out in my email to them. And she reassured me that, you're making the best decision and, the kindest decision for your dog, which, you know that, but you also feel like, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, she gave me what I needed in that moment. And yeah, the next morning I sent my boss, I sent him a note just saying like, I'm taking off next Monday and Tuesday because Wilson is being put to sleep. And just period, that's it. And I'm usually I'm a resident pirate. I'm the girl that gets on meetings with clients and swears like a sailor and uses, ridiculous emojis and yeah, it was a different kind of message from me. And once the decision was made, it was like, it was relief, but it was also like, oh God, like this is not a thing that like is just going to happen and I'm going to deal with it. It's happening, but it's a week away and I have to wait through this. And it was just like, God, it was one of the hardest weeks of my life because like I made the right decision for him and I was giving him this comfort in leaving, but I couldn't give it to him immediately.
Yeah.
And
that's really hard.
Yeah, that was hard. And there were a lot of tears in that week. There was a lot of me being off camera in video calls.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was like every ounce of energy I had went into giving that dog as much love as I possibly could in his last few days. And
so I'm curious, when you are caring for Wilson prior to making that appointment versus caring for Wilson knowing the end is coming, did that change the energy and like what you were doing as you were caring for him? Like you're still doing the same things. He's still incontinent. You're still bringing him to his bowl. Like, what was that experience like? And then did you feel like you were able to do everything you needed to do to say goodbye?
Honestly, that last week, I don't know if you can hear, get into Goose later. Yeah, the last week, honestly, in caring for him, I felt a lot of guilt because in the months before that, I would find myself getting really annoyed with him for things like, going potty inside when he couldn't like get himself down the stairs to go outside.
Yeah.
And we got to that week and it's like, shit, I was annoyed with him. I was upset with him. And I'd say no. And, yeah, it was just the guilt of that and the feeling of like, I haven't been doing right by you for months really hit me hard in that week. And there were a lot of thoughts of like, did I let this go too long? Like, am I a monster because I kept him around too long? Am I a monster because I can't make him comfortable now? Am I a monster because I didn't take him to the vet to get, pain medication so he could be more comfortable in these final days? But honestly, after, I don't know, 3 or 4 days of that, I sort of like said, come on, Kristina, like, stop this. Like, this is bullshit. Just give your dog every ounce of love. Just do that. That needs to be your focus. And so I, had to have a come to Jesus moment with myself and just like switch my brain to, let's celebrate you. Let's, anything that I could do to give him his favorite things and give him things that would make him comfortable and happy, I did. Yeah, his last meal was a chicken breast that I pan fried in some bacon fat and some boxed mac and cheese and some vanilla ice cream.
Nice.
Because that's what he wanted. And funny, like the morning of, I'm just like a complete disaster. And like the fact that I even had makeup on my face is just like, dude, why? Why did you? No point.
Did you sleep the night before?
No, God, no. No. I slept for about 2 hours, like early morning.
Yeah.
But no, I tried all of the tricks. I love to fall asleep to scary movies. And one that like I can always fall asleep to is The Conjuring, because the beginning of it is kind of quiet and it's like visually very dark. So I can always fall asleep to it. And I had put that on at like 11 o'clock at night and I watched the whole damn thing because I couldn't fall asleep. And yeah, I had like tried to record some of Wilson's snores and I did it at the part of The Conjuring where there's all sorts of like screaming and noises of like the exorcism scene. So like these videos of Wilson snoring have just the most horrendous sounds going on in the background. It's like, this is perfect. But yeah, sleep just leading up to and just after. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it still continues to be a bit of an issue because he was a weight on my bed and he snored. All of that is what had gotten me to sleep in the last few years. And yeah, not having that anymore has been a struggle.
Sleep is always the hardest thing in grief. It doesn't come easy. I remember the whole first year after my wife died, I averaged like 3 hours a night for an entire year. I think it was like 3 to 4 if I looked at the graph because I was charting it. But you mentioned in that last week, there was like this coming to Jesus moment where you're just like, what am I doing? I just have to love him. So somehow you were able to flip that switch, which is pretty incredible. But looking like where you are now after experiencing this like doubt in yourself and did I not, give him the pain meds? Did I wait too long? All this stuff. Like, how do you feel now? I mean, you're only 2 months out right now, 2-3 months. So like, is that something that is still coming up for you? Are you still having to kind of work through that guilt and the remorse and did I do enoughs and the what ifs?
I don't, and I'm really lucky in that, but the day of when he passed and they took him away, I've never cried like that. I have never, like it was like a guttural, like my child is gone. My biological child, this thing that looks like Gary Busey is gone. And after I had that, I managed to take a nap, which was great. And when I woke up, I just remember feeling like relieved and thankful that I had made this decision for him to go out as peacefully as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And, the next day there was definitely, I am so, so, so thankful that I took that Monday off and that Tuesday, because there was no possible way for me to even consider working at that time. And that Tuesday I woke up and I'm like, I feel shitty. I feel like this is did I do the worst thing ever? Am I an absolute asshole for what I did? And I stopped myself and I'm like, Kristina, you gave this dog the best goddamn life. You spoiled this dog rotten. You spent thousands of dollars on this dog. This dog got a bark box every single month, even though he didn't play with the toys and rarely ate the treats. Like, you funneled everything you had into this dog. And I decided, like, I'm going to meditate on this. And anytime I have negative feelings, I'm going to meditate and I'm going to remind myself how good of a life this dog had, and how loved he was and how loved he still is. And that, just meditating on the good whenever I had any kind of intrusive thoughts was probably the best thing I did for myself. I also kept, when Lapse of Love came, they did paw prints before he passed, and I have kept those plus a lock of his hair and his collar in my bedroom because that's where we spent most of our time. And in addition to this meditating on the good, so I didn't focus on the bad, I also, if I'm in the process of doing something like washing my face at night, that's when I think about him the most, because we had our routine. I would wash my face. He would snore. I'd get in bed. He'd snuggle up with me. He'd lick some of the expensive product off my face, and then we'd go to sleep. And so when I'm washing my face now, like if I'm having a moment where I'm like, God damn it, I miss this dog, I just grab his collar and I hold it for a while. And these things are there for me to remind me of the love and his presence. And it's just, those two things have helped me so tremendously. And, thank dog for my mother, because my mother, anytime I, voiced any kind of guilt with her, she's just instantly turned it around and said, no, Kristina, you gave this dog the best life.
You seem very grounded in your grief, like just the process of, well, anytime I feel negative, I'm going to meditate, or having these conversations with your mom for reassurance, or just like double checking yourself. And just kind of the way you speak about it, it feels like there's a lot of acceptance and groundedness in the process of losing this constant in your life. So I definitely wanted to call that out, because I think it's pretty awesome to be able to have so much surrounding the grief, right? Because it's like that's something that, like, you went from this constant of unconditional love to this constant of grief, and then being able to build all this love around it, and recognizing that you did in fact love Wilson with so much and went so above and beyond for this dog. Now, you mentioned you have this other dog. What was that process like for, what's the dog's name? Roger? Is that what you said?
Goose.
Okay. What was the process for Goose to lose Wilson? And what is it like for you now to exist with one dog versus two, and I'm making an assumption you only have one now. So one versus two.
Well, so this is going to sound nuts, but I don't care. It's true. Wilson sent me Goose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Wilson passed away mid-February. This dog was rescued as a stray in Long Beach, California. And he was in a stray hold for about 6 days. And then he was rescued by an agency here in Salt Lake and brought up here. And then he was in quarantine for about a month. And then he got neutered on March 24th. And I picked him up on March 26th or 27th.
Okay.
So it was about a month and a half after Wilson. And it was about a month and a half that this dog had been in the process. And he's also a scruffy blonde thing. And he's also more of a creature than a dog, just like Wilson. He is also a complete menace to society. It was another funny adoption story. Like I knew heading into, I had always told myself, honestly, that like after Wilson goes, I'm going to need to get another dog pretty quick just to be able to cope with it.
Yeah.
And I knew that it would be a thing that would like bring me back. And so I had gone to California for work, and I had been to California twice post Wilson passing for work. And the second time I was sitting in the office and I'm like, I'm seeing dogs everywhere. Damn it. I need to start thinking about it. And I got back home, and one night I was just like, fuck it. I can't sleep. I'm going to go on Pet Finder and just see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this dog that I think its name was Noah, and it had a weird story, like Brownie and the Doggy Weight Watchers. It had another like cute, cheeky, fun description. And I'm like, you know what? That might be it. Like, let's go meet this dog. So I reach out to the agents, the rescue agency that had this dog, and it was called Outreach Possibilities, which adorable. And I reached out to them and I said, you know, I just lost my dog of 17 years, and I'm looking for another dog to just like love forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd like something young, because like the two prior dogs lived to be 21 and 17. Like, I'm committed, and you know, I want reasonably small so they can travel with me and blah blah blah. And she emails me back and she says, hey, can I call you tomorrow at 5? Well, yeah, of course. So she calls me and she's like, you know, I don't know if Noah's your dog, but I want you to come to where we're at to just meet everybody and see if you connect with anybody. And so I'm thinking, like, you know what, this is a first round, you know, I'm probably not going to adopt anybody. I just want to
famous last words.
I just want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I just want to see. I'm not going to adopt anything. It's like me saying that I'm not going to buy a pair of shoes when I am in like a really great shoe store. So I go to the morning of, she sends me a text and she's like, hey, I want you to meet me at our quarantine facility first, because, you know, I want you to meet everybody. So she gives me the directions and I show up at this place, and I think I watched too many true crime documentaries, because I get there and it's out like way far west in Salt Lake County. And it was in this area that, like, I was convinced, like, if I get out of the car, I might be murdered.
Oh my.
And like, there are lots of places to hide bodies, and like, this is not a safe space for me. So I'm sitting there in my car. It's snowing and raining at the same time. I've got the door locked. I'm just like, I am not getting out of the car until I see this lady and she does not have an axe in her hand. Like, this is scary. And she gets there and she's this cute little lady in like a sweatshirt that's just got like dog all over it. And I get out of the car and she's the sweetest woman. And she lets me in the door of this place that like looked like it needed to be condemned, or like somebody had definitely been murdered there. It was definitely haunted. I go in there and like it's a machinery shop.
Oh my,
so
my God!
all
Wow.
of this
fuck?
like expensive equipment. Yeah, so like all of this expensive equipment, and the exterior of this place is like, it's scary as fuck because then no one will come in and steal this machinery.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm like, okay, it smells like dog pee in here and there's expensive machinery.
That can't be calm for the dogs, can it?
Well, like it wasn't noisy.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so she brings me to this back room and there are, I don't know, 7-8 dogs back there that are in the quarantine process. And one of them was pregnant and she's like, I don't think you want a pregnant dog. And I'm like, no, I don't. No, nope. Like I work 70 hours a week. Like, no, nope. And like the other dogs, like I wasn't feeling anybody. And she was on a phone call for part of my time there. And when she gets off this phone call, she looks at me and she's like, your dog's not here.
Oh,
huh.
And I said, no, it's not. And she said, okay, I think I know which dog is your dog. I want you to go to my house where all of the other dogs are. And I just want you to meet this dog. And I'm like, okay, am I also going to get murdered here? I don't know. And I get in my car and I put the directions into the, like Google Maps app or whatever. And I look at this place and I'm like, this is at the top of a hill in an area I'm not at all familiar with. It's like 20 minutes away from here, which is like, what the fuck? I felt like I was going to Narnia or something. And I get up there and like her front yard is like a doggy playground. It was really cute. But there was no one there. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm scared. I'm a little tiny bit scared. But like, I'm going to be fine, but I'm scared.
But is this a normal thing when you're like on Pet Finder and you're finding dogs?
I don't think this is.
No, I don't think so.
No.
So she says like, okay, my daughter's going to come out with the dog that I think is your dog.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, this is the most mysterious thing. Like, I don't even get to go in and meet all of the dogs. Like, how do you know this is my dog? And like 10 minutes later, this nice woman walks out with this scruffy blonde thing. And I see him and I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Wow. Did she call this? And she brings him over to me and she says, this is Johnny. And I'm like, I hate the name, but like, why don't you go and like sit with him in your car? Cause it was a cold day. And just like, why don't you two get to know each other? And she hands him to me and he immediately starts kissing my face and I immediately start crying. And of course, if you cry on a dog, you have to adopt it.
Yeah.
So we get in the car and he's just making out with me. And I'm like, you know what? Cool. Like, let's just sit here and make out. Like, that's cool. And they gave me the option to like foster to adopt. And I'm like, okay, that seems reasonable. Like, this might not be my dog. You know, I don't know this woman. I met her for 10 minutes and she's convinced that this is my dog. But, you know, like he's cute right now, but I don't know. And I didn't know if he was going to get along with Calvin. And there was some anxiety. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And we get in the car and we start driving. And he sat in my lap the whole time and just looked up at me like, you're my mom. And every once in a while, he'd like check in and give me a little kiss. But it was just like, oh, shit. Like, I didn't think I was going to adopt a dog today. And this woman I don't know predicted who my dog was going to be.
Yeah.
And now I have this dog. And it took me a couple of days to put the timeline together of like, okay, he was rescued, and then he had a 6-day stray hold, and then he was in quarantine for a month, and it was like, oh my God, like he was picked up right around the same exact day that Wilson passed. And he's also a blonde, scruffy menace to society. Like, this lady predicted my dog, and Wilson sent my dog.
Yeah.
And when I saw him, I was like, this is not like, you're not a Johnny. And the night before, I had a dream that I was considering purchasing a product that was called a Goose. And then I had been on Instagram that morning and had seen something about Goose. And then I see this dog and I'm like, holy shit, you're not Johnny. You are Goose.
Yeah.
So by the time we got home for this foster to adopt, I had renamed him. And by this is a Thursday, and Saturday evening or Sunday morning. No, it was Sunday morning. I had created an Instagram account for him.
Aww.
And the lady sent me a text on Monday. It was just like, how are things going with the foster to adopt? And I'm like, I've already renamed this dog and given him an Instagram account and spent a couple $100 on all of the things. And I had already paid for a year of pet health insurance.
Oh my gosh.
He's yours.
Foster fail. Fastest foster fail.
Yeah, really. So what's the experience been like then, having Goose with you as you are grieving Wilson?
Yeah, honestly, it's been really nice because he reminds me of what Wilson was like when he was a young dog, when we bonded, our bond was solid.
Yeah.
And he reminds me so much of Wilson. Like, he's definitely got his own personality, and he's a menace in a different way than Wilson was. I don't think anybody's going to make any true crime documentaries based off of Goose's behavior. I feel like Goose would maybe be more of like he would be in a mafia, but he would be one of like the dumb guys that goes and does the thing.
The muscle.
Yeah, he would be the muscle. He's 10 pounds. But yeah, it makes me think about how grateful I was to be with Wilson in that stage of his life, and how fun he was at that age. And it makes me even more thankful that I got to be with him for so long, and that I got to be there for him in his old age and through doggy hospice care, and all of the everything that was Wilson's life. Having Goose has just been like, holy shit, I get to do this again. And you're not Wilson, but you're I have that same love. I have that same love for this dog. And
that's amazing.
He's not a Wilson replacement, but he's highlighting how good of a life Wilson had.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I'm so grateful that I get to do this for another dog. And we got a pup cup today because of, of course, thinking about recording this episode. I've been doing a lot of reflecting, and I cried last night. Like, I did my eyeliner and everything yesterday, and I just destroyed my makeup because I had a full on oh my God, I miss Wilson. And today I was like, you know what? I miss Wilson, but I have this great new little friend who just loves me. And, the thing about having a rescue is they know what the alternative is. And they like the look on their face is just like so thankful and so excited, and they love you so much. And I need to be needed by my pet and Goose. But yeah, we went and got a pup cup today because I thought, you know what? I'm sad because I don't have Wilson, but I'm so excited that I get to give you an awesome life. And we're going to get a pup cup and we're going to go home and play fetch.
It was interesting too to hear that you already knew that once Wilson passed, like you have been through this process knowing that I'm going to want to get another dog relatively quick.
Some like other guests that we've talked to are kind of like in the opposite camp. So I think it's really good to hear like the other view. I am like really, I can't really think about it. Like with our 2 dogs now, I'm like, just the thought of it is like, I don't know if we'll get one really quickly, but I know that we won't go long without a dog. Like we just love that. I mean, that's that companion like way too much.
I think it's good because there's 2 things. One, you had enough insight into yourself and to your needs, so you were able to make that decision without any other type of influence. So you were able to make that decision to fulfill your needs and still like hold this love and this grief with Wilson. And then I also think it's very important to highlight because it can give permission to those who maybe know that they want another pet animal in the same instance, but maybe felt guilty for it. Because I can imagine, some folks would have that heavy guilt on themselves of like, well, what am I doing? How does this look? Am I replacing? Am I not replacing? How do you love? How am I going to keep the love and the grief while I'm having this, beautiful new animal in my home? So I think it's really fucking awesome to see that process and what you went through, and to see like last night, you're like, I still was crying. I was still missing Wilson, but I'm still allowed to be happy with Goose.
Yeah.
And that is universal in grief. It's how do you still feel sadness and pain for the thing or the person, the loss that you've suffered, while experiencing the beauty that life can still give us. And that's fucking grief in a nutshell, really. So I think you've illustrated that in such a beautiful way. So before we let you go, we want to ask if you have a memory or 2 that you'd want to share about Wilson.
Oh, Wilson. Gosh, so many, because he was such a character. This dog, so he had skin cancer a couple of times. And the last time he had it, he had a mast cell tumor on his boy part. And when they removed it, he was peeing like at an angle.
Oh yeah.
And he couldn't quite figure out how to aim things.
Oh, poor Wilson.
But then when he figured out like, oh, I don't really pee in a straight line anymore.
Oh my God.
Which means I can just like go nuts with it. So I took him to, there's a mall here called City Creek, and it's built by the Mormon church. And it's like this pristine, clean, like everything is very orderly, and like it's a beautiful, beautiful property. And he loved to go there to, just like show himself off. Like Wilson was like I know I look good. I know I'm cute. I want people to praise me. So like a week or so after his surgery, he was still wearing one of those like Elizabethan collar, like cone alternatives. And I put him in a cute little outfit, and he always wore a bow tie because he was a distinguished gentleman. But we take him to City Creek, and we get him out in like this. So you go through the Nordstrom to get from like the parking garage, and I took him out on the main like floor area where there's this big, beautiful fountain, and he just guns it for this like big pillar that's on the other side of this courtyard. And there was like these people that had obviously just come from like a wedding or something. Like they're in suits and ties and all of the things. And Wilson gets to this pillar and he looks around to make sure people are watching him. And he just lifts his leg very triumphantly. He almost knocked himself over and he just starts spraying. And it went in multiple directions and it was all over the place. He hit a guy's shoe and he was like, his eyes got wide and he was like, fuck yeah, I did that. It was the funniest thing. And he was just so triumphant in that moment. And it was just over the silliest, most absurd thing. Like, I'm going to go to this property that is perfect and gorgeous and cost $1 billion to make and is a church-owned property, and I'm going to pee on it and fuck you if you don't like it. It was
amazing.
So funny. It was so funny. And like that just like encapsulated his attitude. So that was a moment where I was like, I'm proud of my son. That's my son.
Thank you for sharing Wilson with us and sharing Goose with us. And we appreciate you being here. And we are thankful for you sharing and being vulnerable and allowing us to kind of get a glimpse into your journey with grief, especially it being so soon, so recent, I should say.
Yeah, thank you.
And just thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you both. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate if you could take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.